Hello, this is Mark from My Keys to Music. Thanks for joining me on this video. We are having an unusual topic today to talk about. It's a website. I don't think I've ever made a video talking about a website. But in this case, I'll make an exception because this website is near and dear to my heart. As a Nord keyboard aficionado and trainer since 2017, where this entire channel just about is dedicated to Nord keyboards, then this website is a big deal. And the way that it operates and the button you click and where you go from one place to another is a big deal. Even more so because I've done hundreds of videos where I take people onto this website and I show them what button to click and I say, download this and do that and go here for this. So now it's all changed. Someone moved my cheese and I'm happy with that because the new website looks a lot better. It's much more modern, which I think is indicative of the brand's image, which they already do great imaging on their performance videos. They hire the best artists playing the best keyboard with the best sounds, the best instrumentalists. I mean, they do it right. From that perspective, the website now matches that same quality. So I like that. My only critical thing about Nord in general is that they, for whatever reason, they emphasize the performance and the sounds more than the training and the learning and how customers who are using the product get around on the product. And I think, and I don't know what the reason for that is or why the mentality or the culture is that way, but it's good for me because then it leaves a door and a room open for opportunity to train people in my way and create a whole business around it, which I've done at mykeystomusic.com. And then B, maybe they do want the community to self-train or self-guide. The Nord user forum is a great example of many users getting together and helping each other out, figure these keyboards out. They do provide a manual, so maybe they drew the line there, said, well, we've got a manual. We don't need to have an official training course or official training videos in a broad sense where you're having, a whole masterclass is what I'm talking about. Speaking of masterclass, I've created one of those, or several of those, on all the latest Nord keyboards with the exception of the piano and grand line and the lead line, but I have the stage and the electro and the wave line all covered for all the keyboards that are being made today from Nord. Check it out at mykeystomusic.com. Okay, let's get into the website. Brand new design, beautiful imagery, crisp, clean photos, buttons that are rounded, the highlights, the callouts, the font they've used, just the whole layout is top notch, I think. And, I've been I own a software company. I've seen a lot of website designs in my day. I'm not a web designer, but I've seen a lot and I've worked with a lot and helped people architect and orchestrate websites. So in my professional opinion, it's very good. I give it probably a B+ or an A in terms of overall presentation. And excuse me, I'd like to take you on a journey quickly to go over some of the highlights. So we have the main page, which brings us the latest news, the latest updates. I like how they've called out this downloads area where the latest OS with all the main keyboards listed, and then right next to it, the latest software of the 3 main programs that they have as a downloadable application. The other thing I like about this is it kind of clearly shows what keyboards are in and what keyboards are out. Well, actually, there's a better way to do that. If you click on the products tearaway menu here, you see all the products that are current. And what I mean by current is they are currently being manufactured in the factory, sent to distributors, and then eventually in the hands of a retailer. What you don't see on here are the legacy products. So the legacy products has its own button here or its own link. And when you click on that, you'll get to all the legacy products. So what's interesting about that is that the products that they consider newer and are still manufacturing, an example of that would be the Nord Lead A1. Well, that keyboard isn't new. That was released years ago. It just happens to be the latest in that family or in that category of lead instruments. But it's older than the Nord Stage 3, which they now consider a legacy keyboard because it has been trumped by the Nord Stage 4 keyboard, which is being manufactured. The Nord Stage 3, I assume, is not being manufactured anymore. So that's a little bit of a distinction there. The distinction is not so much how old the keyboard is, but rather whether it's still being manufactured or not. Again, I don't have actual proof of that distinction, but that's my guess, my logical guess over the years and years that I've been looking at all this stuff. So then it goes down here and we have highlights of each of the products. I can click on these and read more about it and get into the details. Then as I move down the page, I think the last thing on here is the sitemap. Yes, just the sitemap at the bottom. So let's just take one product and go into the details of that. I'll pick the Nord Grand 2. We've got a brief paragraph description here along with a image. And these images look much better than they had in the old days. They're more vivid now. They're clean. They're straight. They don't have a lot of artifacts around the edges. So they did a good job cleaning that up. We've got the overview. So you can read about the highlighted features, the main parts of the keyboard, and more pictures down below. And then the experience, the performance, and then just some highlighted things to talk about. But then these other tabs here are for specifications. This is where you get some of the nitty-gritty detail, like what's the polyphony, what's the total memory, how many banks are we talking about, sort of the nuts and bolts, the facts and figures of the whole thing, along with the details of every effect type in detail there with the connection options and the very important dimensions and weight options too. Those are probably some of the most important pieces of information when you're buying a Nord keyboard, that and the keybed and what its overall capability is. Then over here we have the sounds. So they've called out the appropriate and compatible sound libraries that go with this keyboard that I'm looking at. So then you can read more about these libraries and get into detail. So it's just saying that you can take advantage of the Nord piano library, the sample library, and the sound collections. Then we have the downloads area, which is an easy way to get to the OS update, the manual, the driver if you're using Windows, and again, related software having to do with the Nord Sound Manager and the Nord Sample Editor. These two are complete applications that you download. They're sidekick companions to your Nord keyboard, each having a specific role. Then we have images and videos with images that can be blown up a little bit bigger. Good for people like me who make YouTube videos and you need a quick picture. And I'm sure they have this for retailers who need to use a picture of the product at a different angle, just collateral material, just for you to see it better. And then this is on a carousel too, if you needed more than the 3 pictures that it presents on that first opening page. Then we have accessories. Now, when it says accessories here, it means accessories specific to the Nord Grand 2. That's what's compatible with the Nord Grand 2, this case along with the stand and these pedals and miscellaneous accessories that are also compatible with the Nord Grand 2. All right, so each product has that same breakdown. If I were to go to the Nord Stage 4, I get the overview, the specs, sounds, downloads, images and videos, accessories, etc., etc., etc. You can read about that. So that's how this whole first part of the products is designed. If I go to the legacy products, obviously this isn't going to have the same amount of material. Here on the Lead 4, which is a much older keyboard now, we still have specs, we still have sounds, we still have downloads and accessories, but we're missing some of the other details that we might see on some of the newer products. But regardless of that, I do like the fact that it's largely consistent and works the same way, looks the same way. So it makes it very easy for the new Nord owner or the up-and-coming Nord owner to kind of navigate their way around things and to make sure they've got the right Nord keyboard for the task at hand. So that's products. Then we go to accessories. This is a complete and full listing of all the accessories, the cases and the stands and the pedals, lots of pedals, and miscellaneous things like the dust covers and the half moon switch. Okay, then we have sounds. Here we can see a kind of a nice dedicated page for the sounds. And of course we have a filter so we can pick the keyboard we're talking about and it will make the appropriate selection filtered by the keyboard type. So if I pick a Nord Stage 4, I should have a lot of options I can pick from the Nord piano library. And by the way, these are highlights. This is not the entire library. They've just highlighted the Soft Grand, the Stockholm, and the White Grand, which are probably some of the newest pianos they provide, and the highlighted sound collections. Again, this is not the whole list. This is just a highlighted list of those things. But you can easily get to the full Monty by clicking here under where it says Nord Piano Library. Then we get the entire piano library for the Nord Stage 4 because I've filtered it by the Nord Stage 4. Same kind of rule applies to the Nord sample library. Here's all the samples compatible with the Nord Stage 4. Sound collections. These are the sound packs, if you will, with a theme or a particular, in this case, these top three are all about strings, or, well, this one's swing sounds, but the first two are strings. And then down here we have the dedicated Mellotron and those collections. There's a lot of interesting things in there. And then finally, the signature sound banks, which are artist-created sound banks. These people program their own sound collections. They demo it. Nord puts out a video, and then you're free to download their interpretation and their programming of the sounds that work for them in their performances and in their personality styles. And then we have a quick link to about the sound libraries and a quick link on transferring sounds and how to go about doing that using the Nord Sound Manager. Those are very brief instructions. Then we have software, which are the dedicated applications for the Nord products. The Sound Manager will allow you to move samples and programs back and forth. It also allows you to back up your keyboard or restore from a factory setting or from a factory image. Then we have the Nord Sample Editor 4, which is if you want to make your own samples and your keyboard can play samples, then you can make your own samples and install those on your keyboard. These other two are for their drum products. I don't know much about the drum products or the software that supports the drums. Then we have downloads here, which is going to ask about which product are you talking about. Once you pick your product, I'll pick the Nord Electro 4. Then I'll have the OS update, factory restore, and so forth, along with the various manuals and various languages for the Nord Electro 4. So you can see there's some crossover where I can get to the same place in a number of different ways. That's the downloads, and then we have the artist page, which I think is, a nice call out, really nice thumbnails of these artists and a brief description. They did have an artist page on the previous website, but I like that it's a little bit more prominent here, and it just looks better. It just makes you feel like there's been some time and effort put into this. So that's the Nord website, but I want to spend the remaining time here going over an important feature. But before I do, let me just finish the top 4 nav options here at the top right. They have a quick history lesson. And if you haven't already checked it out, I have a complete history video on Nord keyboards. I'll put a link in the description below. That takes you on a journey from the very first, from 1983, where they have the digital percussion plate, all the way to the modern day keyboards. And I put that in an interesting graph with a tearaway that shows you, and I talk probably over an hour just talking about the Nord keyboard history. I don't know why I do things like this, but I find it fascinating. So that's the About Us. Then we have news. And then this is where you can get just the latest, greatest things that they've released or things that they want to announce and talk about. Then we have the support page, which is quite a bit newer here. If you are having an issue with support or something you need support on, they encourage you to check the manual, and I have to agree with them on this. A lot of the questions people have could easily be discovered in the manual, but I understand that not everyone is familiar with the manual. Not everyone likes manuals. In fact, that's why I created a whole school, for a video school on training people on all these keyboards, because a lot of people don't like reading the manual, or they want to be able to hear and see and have that training much more engaging than a manual. Then we have the second option is to download the latest OS, and I can concur with them on this, that there are some strange anomalies that happen from time to time that are easily fixed by just upgrading to the latest operating system for your given Nord keyboard. And then finally, we have the contact point of purchase, which is where did you buy your keyboard? Contact them. And then if you exhaust all those options, you can create your own technical support ticket, and then they will provide instructions on next steps. That is different than this option here, which is a feedback form that you can fill out. Just put in your name and provide some feedback. If you want to provide feedback to the company about what you feel about their products or what you think they should do new and different, or congratulating them on a great product, anything that you want to do there, give them feedback. They just tell you that they may or may not respond to that. And then a privacy policy. Okay, so that's support. And then finally, this distributors thing, which really isn't necessarily that interesting for a consumer, but it's very interesting if you are a retailer looking to see about being an official retailer. You'd probably have to go through the distributor for your country, because that's where the product is going to be funneled through. What you're seeing here is a very traditional way that musical instruments are distributed and put through the retail stores. I only know this because I worked 5 years at the National Association of Music Merchants, and I built the database that ran that trade show back in the 90s through about 2000. So I know how this stuff works. Not that that matters that I know, but it's interesting to see that this is a very traditional model of propagating musical instruments in a modern era. They're made by the manufacturer. They're sent to a distributor in that country. The distributor then propagates that information and that material to a given retailer, and that's how the chain of command works. That's why you can't buy a Nord keyboard directly on the Nord Keyboards website, because it's a sophisticated purchase that requires a retailer, much like how most automobiles are sold, with the exception of Tesla. So that's it for the website. Now, finally, the piece that I'm most excited about, I probably should have led with this, which is this option here called Compare Products. Prior to this, we had a PDF of sorts. We had a dedicated webpage on the Nord website that would compare Nord Stage 2 with a Nord Stage 3, or a Nord Grand with a Nord Grand 2, or a Nord Piano 4 with a Nord Piano 5. And although that was something, and it did get us in the right ballpark, it wasn't inclusive of all the Nord keyboards I might want to compare. I was in the middle of making this comparison sheet. I was actually building software to do this because it was something that no one on planet Earth was doing, and because we needed a configurable configurator where we can pick product 1, product 2, product 3, and compare all the attributes of those products side by side. This is a page out of the Apple Notebook. If you go to apple.com and you go buy a laptop, there's a little link that says almost the same thing, compare laptops, boop, and you get a screen that looks very similar to this, product 1, product 2, product 3. You put in your laptops. Once you put them in there, it compares them for you. Terrific. Hats off. A+, people at Nord. A+++++, just like in the movie Grease. We have a Nord Piano 5, for example. I'll compare that with a Nord Stage 4. So they highlight and call out the details of these major comparison points. Now, are these a complete exhaustive list of every little attribute and nook and cranny that you could compare? No. It does a broad overview of the main points, the deal breakers of why you might want one keyboard over the other. But I think that's already a huge win, because so many people have questions about which Nord keyboard is right for me. And I think they have that question, A, because they're very expensive, it's a big investment, and B, there's a lot of overlap. So you could buy two keyboards that are different that both get the same job done. If they both have a piano engine, they're both going to get your piano work done, essentially. But there's nuances in there, and I think having an engine like this is perfect. I'll finish by taking you through this just a little bit. It's comparing here the key beds, so we can see that both the Piano 5 and the Stage 4 have an 88 version and a 73 version. The key bed on the Piano 5, however, is a weighted hammer action. For the Stage 4, we also have a weighted hammer action, but we also have the compact semi-weighted waterfall option in the 73 key. That's the compact version of the Stage 4. So it highlights that. Now you can go research more about it, and at least you can get in the right arena as far as your comparison goes. They both have the triple sensor key bed. One has aftertouch, one doesn't. One has a pitch stick and a mod wheel. That's the Stage 4. The Piano 5 doesn't. So by the time you read through this, you'll clearly see, oh, okay, so I can't use the Piano 5 to do a whammy bar electric guitar sound. Not going to happen. I can't use the Piano 5 to create an organ imitation of a rotating Leslie speaker and an organ that sounds like an authentic B3. Not going to happen with the Piano 5. But electric piano, grand piano, no problem. Even synth strings that are playing sample strings, no problem. They're both going to do that just fine. It ends here by going through all the different effect settings, and they go into pretty good detail there. We have every single effect processing engine, which in a sense equates to a stomp box pedal. Each one of those is called out in detail. So again, it's an orientation over comparing two keyboards that would typically be apples and oranges. Nord would never compare a Piano 5 with a Stage 4 ever in any of their documentation. It was left up to YouTubers like me to do stuff like that. All right, so then at the end, we're talking about the dimensions and the weight, which are also key important things to compare. So Thanks for joining me on this very unusual video talking about a website, but this is not just any website. This is, in a sense, where we go as a Nord keyboard owner to get our business done, or where we go as a prospective buyer to do our research. Thanks for joining me on this video. Be sure to like and subscribe. And by the way, if you are looking to learn your Nord keyboard and master it, I have master classes available at mykeystomusic.com. Love to have you as a student. We go over all of this stuff in detail, and I go over every button, every knob, every slider, every nuance. We go through the entire manual, but I put it in video form, and I also use actual song demonstrations from real music, not just stuff I make up, although I do make up a lot of stuff and do demos that way, where the concepts will make sense because it'll be related to something you're already familiar with. Anyway, thanks for joining me. We'll catch you on the next one.